Good afternoon, members of the press. Allow me to remove the face mask. Thank you for coming at a short notice. Our apology for starting late. Welcome to the MDC Alliance press conference. With me here is the leadership of the party. We've got the Secretary for Rural Strategy, Honorable Hebmo Chiziva. We also have the Secretary for International Relations and Cooperation, Comrade Gladys Flachwayo, and the Vice President, Honorable Tendai Biti. Zanu PF government is attempting to evict 12,500 villagers in Chilonga, Chiredzi district in Masvingo province. These are poor farmers, peasant farmers, who have suffered at the hands of this current regime and the past colonial regime. Their ancestral homes are set to be demolished, as has become the order across the country. Mnangagwa has earmarked the land for his friend's company, Den Dairy. As MDC, the People's President, Advocate Nelson Chamisa, commissioned a five-member delegation for a fact-finding. This delegation spoke to villagers and other affected people in Chilonga. The Vice President, Honorable Tendai Biti, will now give you the findings. These findings were presented to the People's President, Advocate Nelson Chamisa, and the leadership. Allow me, comrades and friends, members of the press, to welcome to the podium the Vice President of the party, Honorable Tendai Lakson Biti. Over to you, VP.
Thank you. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, members of the Fourth Estate. Before I begin, let me join the international community, Zimbabweans and everyone else in wishing our mothers, our sisters, our daughters, our partners, our aunts, our grandmothers a happy International Women's Day. Starting with you, Honorable Lady Satlwai, and all the ladies that are present. I can see you are smiling. It's a special day. So, on 26th of February 2020, the Minister of Local Government, Comrade July Moyo, enacted the communal lands setting aside of lands Chiredzi notice, which was published as statutory instrument 50 of 2021. On the same day, Mr. Mnangagwa enacted another statutory instrument, the communal lands brackets excision of land notice, which was publicized as statutory instrument 51 of 2021. The net effect of these statutory instruments is to set aside, is to confiscate 12,940 hectares of land located in the Chilonga area of Chiredzi from being communal lands, from being owned by the communities there to be owned by a private entity, Den Dairy, which will embark on a grass growing exercise. The grass is known in Latin as lucerne. Concerned with this issue, our party and leadership, Comrade Advocate Nelson Chamisa, on the 3rd of March 2021, directed that a team be dispatched on a fact-finding mission to Chiredzi in Masvingo province. This team was in Chiredzi on the 6th and 7th of March 2021. The team comprised of Honorable Gladys Tlachuayo, our Secretary for International Relations, Hepmo Chidziva, our Secretary for Rural Affairs, Comrade Amos Shibaya, our Organizing Secretary, Mrs. Mgido, our National Women's Affairs Secretary, and of course other members from the province. We traveled long distance in these communities. Those of you who know the areas, there are huge distances from the highway all the way to Chikombezi. We went to places like Malipati, places like Bole, places like Chilonga itself, and these are huge distances in extremely underdeveloped area. We interviewed and spoke to community leaders, local villagers, farmers. We spoke to traditional leaders, chiefs, headmen, and their assistants. We spoke to church leaders across the length and the breadth of this community. We were amazed by the love that they showed to the leadership that was present. But we saw a very broken community, a very fractured community, a very uncertain community, a very fatalistic community. We saw a very underdeveloped community. It's been 41 years of independence, but to those communities, independence just blew and passed through like the wind on its way to South Africa. The extent of the underdevelopment is shocking. We couldn't find anywhere to sleep. There was no hotel, there are no lodges there. So we actually had to sleep in cars and in the houses of our party members. We couldn't even find gas stations to fill up our cars, and we had to buy diesel, for instance, from communities which actually buy diesel from Mozambique. In many of the areas there, they actually don't have access to basic Zimbabwean amenities. There's no radio there. So people listen to South African radio, people listen to South African television. There are no mobile networks there. So people actually use MTN. So in that part of the world, in that part of Zimbabwe, MTN is actually the dominant mobile network there. There are hardly any schools there. There is hardly any secondary school with A level and with laboratories which can offer science. There are few clinics, there are few hospitals, and they offer nothing. Then you have got this massive expanse of national parks, Gonare Jo. So people live around these parks, Malilangwe Trust and Gonare Jo. So part of the challenge in those communities are wild animals. With the opening up of the Trans-Frontier border, they've opened up the Kruger National Park with the Gonare Jo in another park in Mozambique. Animals are now roaming the three countries. So one of the traditional leaders we saw there, his biggest problem, apart from the Chilonga displacement, were actually wild animals. Rhinoceros and black rhino, which he said came from South Africa. He said, but how do you know it comes from South Africa? He says, no, ours are well behaved. These ones are from South Africa. So these are challenges that these communities live. So we saw the challenge of uneven and unequal development. We saw the challenges of exclusion and isolation in those communities. We spoke to these communities extensively, and our information department will be releasing video clips of the communities speaking for themselves, of the individuals speaking for themselves. So there are 5 dominant issues that we established. Firstly, we established that this is an extensive program of displacement. The government is going to displace these people in 3 phases. So phase 1 covers 12,500 people. and 12,940 hectares of land have already been exercised. Phase 2 and phase 3 will take more land, so that the total land that they intend to take is 21,000 hectares, and that's a massive, piece of land from these communities. The second thing that we also established is that there is no plan. There is no plan by the government. There are no concrete plans of the relocation of these individuals. So they don't know where they are going. We asked in Parliament last week on Wednesday where they intend to take the communities. The government itself doesn't give an answer. So you have got this strange program by a strange government that seeks to displace thousands of people, but it doesn't know where to relocate them. And all of us know that in the past relocations, for instance, Transao in Manicaland, they failed and failed dismally because there was no one who planned for the relocation of these communities. The third issue which the community is asking is, why us? This is a community that has been displaced twice in its history. In 1963, for instance, the Ian Smith government displaced this community to create and make way for the sugar estates under Hippo Valley and Tongat Willet. So they were displaced, thousands and thousands of them were displaced to make room for Hippo Valley. The second phase of the displacement before independence was to make way for Gonare Jo National Park. So as I said, Gonare Jo, this community is in the heart of the Lowville, the southeastern part of the Lowville. So Gonare Jo is right in the middle of their community. So they were displaced to create room for this nature reserve called Gonare Jo, which some of you who know it know that it runs into thousands and thousands of hectares. Third, they were displaced to create the nature reserve that is known as Malilangwe, that is controlled by Malilangwe Trust. So again, they were moved. And when they were moved, they went literally and metaphorically in no man's land, where they rebuilt their lives. They rebuilt a fresh community, where they faced tsetse fly, wild animals, heat, and incessant droughts. And over the years, they've become master farmers in small grains, particularly sorghum, millet, and so forth. The area can't do maize because it doesn't have sufficient rains. So they've become masters of small grains. And as we are talking to you right now, they are subcontracted through contract farming by Delta Corporation to actually make small grains that are used in the production of traditional brews by Delta, brews such as Chibuku. And these are people, if you recall, who have been in Zimbabwe for over 500 years. Shaka Zulu's Mfekwan took place in 1830. The founder of what we now call the Shangani people in Zimbabwe was Soshangan, who was Chaka's general who left Zululand in 1830 to settle in Mozambique after displacing and conquering the Tsonga people to establish what was known as the Gaza Estate. And the Gaza Estate, if you know, extended into Zimbabwe. It covered Mozambique, and then it extended into Mozambique, into Zimbabwe, in the Lower Veld, extended into South Africa, into Transvaal. So the Shangani community have been in this country for over 5 centuries. To be precise, they've been in this country for 491 years. So they are part of Zimbabwe. They are not foreigners, they're not invaders, they are part of Zimbabwe. They've been occupying this land in Mozambique, in South Africa, and in Zimbabwe for a period in excess of 500 years after Soshangani established the Gaza Estate. So they get consent, and here I'm reproducing their own testimonies. They get consent by a government that they themselves think has got a grudge against the people of Nguni extraction in this country. They pointed out to us that Gukura Wundi was inflicted against the Ndebele people, who are people of Nguni extraction. They pointed out that part of the people were displaced over Marange diamonds were the Ndaus, who are again people of Nguni extraction. Now, they themselves, the Shangani, again of Nguni extraction, are now being targeted. And they identify certain individuals in the current government who have been involved in the assault, the predatory assault on Nguni people from Gukura Hundi to the present day. So they keep on asking, if you don't want us as Nguni people in this country, please tell us so that we go back to South Africa and we go back to Mozambique. So what we found there is that the Chilonga displacement raises a major question of the national question in Zimbabwe. What does it mean to be a Shangani in Zimbabwe? What does it mean to be Ndau in Zimbabwe? What does it mean to be Ndebele in Zimbabwe? What does it mean to be a Tonga in Zimbabwe? What does it mean to be an ethnic minority in Zimbabwe? These are the hard questions that we found villagers and communities telling us there, traditional leaders telling us there. It's a deep, deep, deep issue. And they were speaking from their hearts, as you see from some of the video content that we brought from Zimbabwe. And one villager said, if you don't want us, tell us so that we go back to Mozambique. If you don't want us, tell us so that we go back to South Africa. So it's a story of alienation. It's a story of reification. It's a story of exclusion. It's a story of fear. It's a story of torture. When you speak to them, it's almost like you are talking and you are in another country, not Zimbabwe. But there's no sense of belonging. There is no sense of ownership. There is no sense that I'm a Zimbabwean. I mean, for Christ's sake, 41 years after independence, a Zimbabwean uses an MTN card to communicate. A Zimbabwean goes and buys petrol in Mozambique. So it's shocking what we saw there. The fourth issue that they are raising is that there are so many farms that were taken during the land reform program in Masvingo province, in Chiredzi itself, in Menezi itself. So their argument is, look, if a white man wants to do grass for cattle, surely why don't you start with these farms that are already redundant, that are growing grass anyway, natural grass, so you can mix the cow grass with natural grass that is already there, and the snakes that are there, the blackjack that are already there. Because they pointed out to some of these farms. We were told of a Mr. Greaves, one farm owned by a former white farmer called Mr. Greaves, and they were saying Mr. Greaves' farm is there and it's redundant. So why are you coming to our land when you have got Mr. Greaves' farm and other redundant farms? The fifth thing that they were raising is that we are already doing contract farming for Delta, for the grain marketing board, for cotton companies. So if anyone wants us to do this cow grass, Lucerne, we can do it on the same terms, on the basis of contract farming. So why do you need to take away our land? The next question that they were raising is that what is so special about this Lucerne grass? What is so dynamic about this Lucerne grass? Is it gold that you want to take away our land, our ancestral land? And these people has got special burying methods. We were told that they actually bury their dead in their houses. They actually bury their dead in their crows. Vanochera matanga avo emombe. Vanoisa vanhu vavo muzvikuwa mumba. So they were saying, how are you expecting us to leave our ancestral homes? And are you saying as a government that a cow grass is now more important than us, the people, than our graves, our shrines? So to them, it doesn't make sense. They also believe that there is an ulterior motive here. They also believe genuinely that the land that they are occupying land that must be on top of diamonds, that must be on top of gold or some other precious mineral. So they genuinely believe that they're being displaced in order to make way for extractive institutions that are going to mine this gold or this diamond. They also don't understand why some of them who were displaced in those communities to make way for Tokwe Mkosi dam. Now that Tokwe Mkosi is now ready, and now that Tokwe Mkosi irrigation schemes can be made, and they were going to be beneficiaries of irrigation schemes supported by Tokwemkosi water infrastructure, they are now being displaced from the hinterland of Tugwi Mkosi. One of the things that they also raised was that we actually participated in the War of Liberation. They showed us mass graves of people buried 10 and so forth in graves during the War of Liberation. So they don't understand that why they're being displaced to make way for one white man when they participated in a war of liberation whose centerpiece, whose center of gravity was the land question. So they actually don't understand why one man should be given 12,940 hectares of land when they sacrificed and fought during the war of liberation. They can't have answers to that. They also are saying we did not benefit, not a single Shangani benefited from the land reform program. They point out to the fact that if you go to Hippo Valley and Triangle and the Tongat Hewlett sugar farms that were given to black people pursuant to the land reform program, you will not find a Shangani. They say if you find a Shangani will be a gardener or a laborer in those communities. So they're saying we didn't benefit from the land reform program, but you are now taking our own communal lands when we didn't benefit from the land reform program. So these are hard questions. There's also a gender dimension. There's also a gender dimension to this move by the government of Zimbabwe. The communities are saying because there is no employment in this neighborhood, the majority of our children, our sons, are in South Africa, working in South Africa. So the people you are actually relocating are women. How are women going to build new homesteads? With what money, with what power, with what resources? So there's a genderized component to these relocations, which they also raised in these communities. So, what is our way forward as a party? We demand forthwith that the government should stop this relocation. We demand that the government should repeal, as a matter of urgency, Statutory Instrument 50 of 2021 and Statutory Instrument 51 of 2021. But more than that, we argue that the government should, as a matter of urgency, repeal the Communal Lands Act. The Communal Lands Act was passed by the government of Zimbabwe in 1983. But when you look at it and you read it, it is worded exactly, literally word for word, with the Tribal Trust Lands Act that it repeals. The Tribal Trust Lands was passed by the colonial regime in 1931, the same year that was passed the Land Approachment Act of 1931, which took away black people and placed them in tribal trust lands, Maruzeva, Macommunal lands. It stripped black people of their land. And even those tribal trust lands, they were not given in trust to traditional leaders, to chiefs. They were given not in trust to the president. They were given to the president. The sitting president was given ownership of tribal trust lands. I was reading the act this morning. I thought it would say the president is holding tribal trust lands in trust. It doesn't even say that. So the president of the day can literally treat tribal trust lands or communal lands as his private property, as this one is doing, taking away land and giving it to his cronies. So we demand that there must be an immediate repeal of the Tribal Trust Lands Act, now known as the Communal Lands Act, so that land vests with the people, so that villagers who have stayed in lands for thousands of years are actually given that land. We say in our blueprint, our manifesto of 2018, the SMART document, that everyone on land in the communal lands, which measure 19 million hectares across the length and breadth of Zimbabwe, should be given a certificate of title on his rural land, which is tradable, which can be hypothecated, i.e. you can take it to a bank and borrow on it. Which means that you cannot be dispossessed of your land without compensation, which means that you become subject to protection of the property rights provisions of the Constitution, in particular Section 71 of the Constitution. It is absurd 41 years after independence that a rural farmer, a communal farmer, and all of us have rural homes, you actually don't have rights to that land. That land is not even being held by the president in trust. It's being held by the president in his capacity as a president. This is atrocious. This is unacceptable. Secondly, the right to consult must be entrenched in the law. If there's a developmental project in the national interest, the people must be consulted. One chief said there must be a referendum in this community on this land, because you simply can't just wake up in Harare, walking up on the wrong side of the bed and say, I'm taking away 12,000 hectares or 21,000 hectares. So the affected individuals must participate in a referendum. Are you for this development project? Does it actually benefit us? The right to be heard, the right to consult is part of our constitution. Section 68 of the Constitution of Zimbabwe says no action should be taken against an individual without that individual having been heard. In Latin, they call it the aut alteram partem rule. So here you have a law that says you don't need to consult anyone. You simply need to consult the local district council. And that's it. And this is what actually happened in this case. That's clearly unconstitutional. But for a party that purports and calls itself a liberation movement, this is pathetic and absolutely unacceptable. Third, given the uneven and unequal development that we saw in Chiredzi, in Chilonga, in Malipati, in Bole, it is our submission that devolution laws must be expedited in this country so that these communities can have self-governance. They feel excluded. So pass the devolution laws so that these people can exercise self-governance over their own, resources. Next, we feel that the national question needs to be re-examined in Zimbabwe. And we suggest that an inclusive body be set up to actually look at the national question in Zimbabwe. What does it mean, as I asked before, what does it mean to be of Nguni extraction in Zimbabwe? To be a Tonga, to be a Ndau, to be a Shangani, to be a Tsonga. What does that mean to be in Zimbabwe? Because there's so much exclusion, there's so much alienation, there's so much reification, there's so much abuse of ethnic minorities in Zimbabwe. They were talking about schools with being taught by people that can't speak the local language, Shangani. They were talking about pastries that are a disaster because the teacher doesn't understand the customs of the communities. So the issue of integration, the issue of resolving the national question is a disaster. Finally, and to conclude, what is happening in Chilonga is a price that Zimbabwe is paying for the crisis of illegitimacy that is arising and that arose out of the 2018 election. If we had a people government, no people's government would do what Mr. Mnangagwa is trying to do in Chilonga. You can't take away land and give it to your buddies, to your cronies. You can't take away crony capitalism to this level. So Zimbabwe needs to resolve the political question. We need to resolve the crisis of illegitimacy to avoid what is happening in Chilonga. And of course, we, the people of Zimbabwe, have decided to exercise our right to dissociation with the product known as dairy. So the communities, they appreciated the stance we have taken, that we have dissociated ourselves with the product known as dairy. They were so happy when we said, from now onwards, we're all drinking dairy boat. No to dairy, no to dairy. I thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Kesile, Vice President. Any questions from the members? Any questions? No further questions. Move on.
My question is the government really aware or unaware of the context in which you place these discussions? displacement? Is the government aware that people are feeling this way? Is the government aware that all that they are doing is going back to 1830? Is the government aware?
The second one?
The local MP for the area said consultations were done and the villagers are willing to move. From your statement, you are saying there was no consultation that was done. So, which is which now?
Clearly, there was no consultation that took place. The people, the communities, they are very clear. They are very clear. They don't want to move. They don't want to move. And it doesn't take a genius. It doesn't take a rocket scientist. Why would you want to move from where your roots are? They've built houses and so forth. And one of the things that I noticed about their structure, unlike in Dotito and Chendambuya, where I come from, they actually built, most of the time, hard rock, brick and mortar houses. So you can't abandon that infrastructure. Remember, they've got thousands of kids in South Africa who send money. So the government definitely did not consult. And we challenge the government, ask for a referendum there on the people, and you see the result. It will be overwhelming. It's clear they don't want to move. And in fact, they said, look, we don't even want aid from you. Just leave us with our land, because they are successful sorghum producers. Literally each household has got cattle, and literally every household has got amazing goats and pigs that roam around. So the per capita income of that community, compared to places such as Mat Shonar and Central, Mat North, Mat South, should be very high, should be higher, because they're able to do their things. They're able to do their farming. So their attitude was that, oh, leave us alone, and we also leave you alone. Don't disturb us, because we've learned to cope with your isolation, with your exclusion. Yvonne, I think this government knows, and they know. In fact, we were told of delegations that actually went to see Mr. Mnangagwa, and Mr. Mnangagwa gave them guarantees that they will not be moved, but in fact, they will actually benefit from the irrigation of 2 Gimkos, but that they will have to pay, and there's no problem that they will have to pay for the irrigation infrastructure. They were very clear. They were given assurances. So, which is why they kept on saying, but look, we find certain individuals, the same individuals who were involved in Bukurawundi, who were involved in the mess in Marangi, and the displacement of people there to Transao and so forth. We are now finding the same individuals here. And when they were speaking, they said this white man came. The white man came and his colleagues, the Kosia, the Denderi people. And these people were saying, we were not sent by the government, we've been sent by the president. So they locate this in the office, in the door, in the kitchen, in the bedroom of Emerson Dambudzo Mnangagwa. They were very clear that, look, we locate this in an individual, not in the state, not in an institution. So to answer your question, Yvonne, the regime knows, the regime is indifferent, the regime doesn't care. But what else can we expect from a government presided over by Emerson Dambudzo Mnangagwa?
Kesile, blessing.
Yes, my question is, have you tried to look at the developmental side of this move that government is trying to push? That maybe the people of that area would probably benefit.
Second one.
Your address touches on the geopolitical part of things. When people now saying we are better off being returned to South Africa or Mozambique. If you try to interrogate this aspect and how South Africa can be involved in this whole issue.
Yeah, they told us that, and we've got this on camera. They told us that, look, if you don't want us, we people of Nguni extraction, if you don't want us, then take us back to Mozambique, take us back to South Africa. Now, obviously, as a Zimbabwean, I'm total against the excision of a group of Zimbabweans to another country. And I think that the South African government would say no as well. Zimbabweans must be integrated, which is why I said, please enact the laws dealing with devolution. Please, let's deal with the national question. Let's have a national commission of inquiry run by the church to actually investigate The national question, as I said before, what does it mean to be Ndawi in Zimbabwe? What does it mean to be a Kore in Zimbabwe? What does it mean to be a Tonga in Zimbabwe, to be a Kalanga in Zimbabwe, to be a Shangani in Zimbabwe? These questions need to be answered. But that Zimbabweans who have got their roots here, who have got their umbilical cord here, can be relocated outside the country. It breaches international law. It breaches our constitution. Chapter 3 of our constitution is very clear about what a Zimbabwean is. Someone born here or born here by parents or grandparents of Zimbabwean extraction. These are Zimbabweans who have been here since 1830. These are Zimbabweans who have been in this country for over 491 years. They are no better than you. After all, the majority of Zimbabweans here came as late as the 2nd century. So all Zimbabweans here basically, except the original, San Khoikhoi people, the Bushmen, all of us here came at a certain level of time, just different in time. We all came from somewhere. So no one has got a bigger claim than the other because your ethnic tribe or grouping came before the other one. So which is why this nonsense about tribal exclusion is what it is, absolute nonsense.
Last round.
There's no development. It's grass. It's grass, and these people are experts in grass. Small grains are grass. So these people know grass. Grass is not development. If you are talking about building factories, beneficiation, this is agriculture with the same false accumulation model, which is why the communities were asking, but we've been growing grasses for centuries. Maize is a grass, rapoko is a grass, sorghum is a grass, millet is a grass. Why don't you subcontractors as Delta is doing to us? So this is not about grass. And what kind of grass requires 12,000 hectares? What kind of grass? And if you have been in those communities that are blessed, they are expansive pieces of Inyika. They are expansive pieces of land. Why do you need all that land to do what? And one of the problems which we are facing in Zimbabwe is underutilization of land acquired during the land reform program. This regime is boasting about a harvest, a bamba harvest this year. At most, if we do well, it will be 2,000 hectares. Little Malawi, which has got half the land, which doesn't put not even a quarter of the resources that we put on command agriculture, we produce 3.2 million tons of meat. That's a bamba harvest. Now you're talking. So we'll produce maybe 1,800 tons, maybe 2,000 metric tons, but because the government is desperate of success, it is going to call it a bamba harvest. But why can't we produce 4,000 metric tons? Because 3/4 of the land is idle. 3/4 of the land is not being used. So if 3/4 of the land of 15 million hectares of land that was acquired during the land reform program is not being utilized, why doesn't Mr. Den Derry go to all those farms that are not being used? Half of the people that were given land right now are leasing them. They're subleasing them to white people at 7% or 10% of the gross output of that land. You know that. Mashonaland West is the most affected province. They are now landlords instead of farmers. So if Mr. Den Derry wants to do his grass, he must go and lease land in Mashonaland West. I can even point him to some of the farms that are not being utilized. So this has nothing to do with development. It's extraction. This government, since 2017, is anchored on corruption. In 7 commanding heights of corruption. There is fuel, there is the US dollar, there is command agriculture, there are minerals, there are subsidies, there are buses, there is land itself. So it's a regime founded on corruption. It has taken corruption to another level. This is what it is all about. And the communities, they are not fooled. They know exactly what is happening and why it is happening.
Okay, Sile. Any other question? Thank you, Mashuma Twalumba Loko.